game number 2 here on Daybreak, as we do have spawning up to the top right-hand corner here, the winner of our previous game, slightly unexpectedly. He goes by the name of IEM Delphi, going to be spawning as our blue Zerg. And spawning down to the bottom left-hand corner, we do have Mr. Startails Bomber spawning here as our red Terran.
Yeah, and on this map, I do think that one of the most standard openings that I think Bomber should rely on if he wants to return back to those standard routes would be the Hellion Banshee opening. Yeah. That's kind of the bread and butter of Terran players nowadays. It allows them to have the fast mobile units up early to deny creep spread, to do harassment at the start. It also allows you to get 3 command centers up quite quickly to do the macro mode. It's a little difficult to get your Marine upgrades up that quickly, but players are less and less favoring fast Marine upgrades and more just favoring having a lot of stuff in this matchup.
Yeah, no, you're entirely right. And interestingly enough, once again, Delphi going to be sending out that drone scout to be able to spot any kind of proxy potential. Again, people like Bomber and Korean Terrans in general like to mix it up a little bit, like to bring that aggression in a best of 3, which means it can throw a lot of Zergs off, and it can be difficult to deal with if you haven't initially spotted it.
And there's the barracks now, up at the left side. It's this sort of unorthodoxy that the Koreans do that I like a lot. Just interesting building placements, even when they are doing something quite standard, just due to the fact that often Delphi will scout into the main base, see nothing, freak out, build too many Zerglings, and then Bomber gets away with a very clean early expand.
You're entirely right there, as he comes into the base for now and has a little bit of a look around. Not seeing any barracks just yet, so he's either going to assume from here that it's, some kind of proxy barracks, or it's some kind of command center first build. Either that or the barracks is just randomly hidden somewhere anyway. So Delphi is doing a good job actually here of scouting around other locations, but unfortunately he hasn't scouted the one location that it is in.
Yeah, that is always a really tough spot to be in as a Zerg, when you just have absolutely no idea what's going on. Let's see how Delphi does respond. Perhaps he would be delaying a geyser. Perhaps he's just going to leave this drone. Yeah, I like this play quite a bit, just leaving the drone by the El Naga watchtower. It looks like, ooh, this is going to continue the ruse. I mean, if I'm in Delphi's shoes, I'm going to be thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to be building 8 Zerglings right off the bat, might even delay those queens, but they're the one SCV pulls off. And there's no backup SCV, and that should be Delphi's signal to not make too many lings. Yeah,
no, you're entirely right there, as he has been able to fend that off nicely. He does lose a little bit of fighting time, admittedly, but the spine crawler is on the way, and as you kind of just kind of peeked at there, maybe a little bit of an overextension.
Yeah, finally now pulling back and building the queens, doing the more standard play, getting his macro started. But there's Bomber. Oh, yes, getting the double gas geyser. It does look like we're probably going to see some sort of Hellion-based play.
Yep, that's always one of the very, very common builds to see here. Even throwing the bunker down there just to be able to... It's interesting, these bunker placements that you see from Terrans nowadays, just a little bit further back near the ramp. To be able to kind of try and deal with something if the push is going to be coming up the ramp as well, so you can actually shoot at the units whilst they're at the top of the ramp.
Yeah, this is, I think, one of the most brilliant things that Terran players have done nowadays. It's allowing them to get away with everything, and it looks like, oh no, again, Delphi gets a really lucky break. He's just darting right in. The 8 Zerglings he built at the start are going to get maximum use as they're going to head in, pick off themselves a lot of SCVs at the start of the game. I mean, even picking off 1 or 2 would have been just a pretty comfortable exchange, and he manages to get 3 right off the bat. Bomber now at 19 SCVs versus the 25 of Delphi.
And very much so. It seems like that initial economic supply depot hurt him a little bit there. Having that in your wall would have shut that down straight away. Yeah. But because he did not have that there, Delphi just able to seize the opportunity once again. And in a similar vein to game number 1, he's just exploiting the slight little errors that we're seeing from Bomber's play here.
Yeah, we haven't really seen any sort of anything really too mind-blowing from Delphi in terms of originality. No. He's just doing ultra-stable plays. Yeah. He saw the bunker rush, overbuilt Zerglings, and said, well, I overbuilt Zerglings, I may as well try to do damage with them. Completely standard play, and yet Bomber seemingly getting caught off guard. Bomber, again, going for the Hellion Banshee play. Absolutely love that on this map. Third hatchery popping down for Delphi right now. Also like this quite a bit, as it's so easy to defend. He may very well go up to 6 queens.
Yeah, and especially after the little bit of poking damage he was able to do there in game number 1, he was able to, in that initial poke, then he was able to, do quite a bit of damage. And from there, it makes it a little bit easier to secure this third. Now, the Hellions are on the way, but these Queens are already moving out to a little bit of an interesting position, actually.
Yeah, these Queens are getting very far out. They might be going to try to get the watchtower themselves, I suppose.
I guess.
It gets extremely, extremely dangerous to get your Queens that far out onto the map. And there we see Bomber is aware of the third base. Delphi now scouting in at just the perfect time. Look at this. In the production tab, we see that the first Banshee is about to pop out. Cloaking has just started. And this is going to be a pretty nice situation for Delphi to be in.
Yeah, and this is something that we kind of tried to potentially anticipate. Oh, and he's faking the cloak. He's going for Caduceus Reactor.
Oh, and he's heading up into the main base. It looks like he's going to try to do maximum damage to the back worker line, but Delphi has somewhat of a block. No, he's unable to block off these Hellions, and those are so lined up. Kalaris,
he takes a lot of damage there with one volley. 4 drones ending up dying. He's going to get a few more as well as these Hellions try to push forward, trying to do a little bit more damage. 2 more workers, and 4 more workers. And up to 10 there, killed off. Really, really nice little aggression there by Bomber.
Yeah, Bomber, interestingly, is not following this up with a third command center, as is the standard in this... there's the third command center, as is totally standard with this play. He's going to be able to get his double upgrades up. He's going into the long-term late game. Still a drone lead on the plate for Delphi.
Yep. Now, it's interesting that Bomber is advocating a little bit of a style here, which isn't necessarily as greedy as some Terrans do want to play. A little bit of Banshee Harass actually going off on here as well, though, as the Spore Crawler and Queen trying to position themselves here. And again, because he fakes that Caduceus Reactor, he really did force these Spore Crawlers.
Yeah, I mean, this is an excellent play by Bomber. I like that force quite a bit. 1-1 actually getting a little bit flubbed there by Delphi. Bomber leaving the Banshee in the most annoying defensive position possible. This way, Delphi is almost always going to be on the lookout, not wanting to move out, not wanting to risk getting out of position. These Spore Crawlers, did he actually manner himself with the Spore Crawler? No, it looks like he still can mine there. Baneling Nest now incoming. We don't actually see the macro hatch that we saw from Delphi in the original game, so yeah. He is going super defensive. There's another defensive structure at the third base.
No, that's very right. And from there, again, as you rightly pointed out, maybe not getting too aggressive. He is getting the Baneling Nest, but that's just going to ward him against any kind of, those Marine and Hellion pokes that did come along in game number 1. So he's getting 1-1 on the way, and I love going for the melee upgrades as opposed to, say, like committing to roaches in the mid-game against Terran, which is something that some Zergs do, because the melee upgrades just help you so much more in the late game, whereas the ranged weapons become very, very redundant.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially the integration with Broodlords and Ultralisks. The melee upgrades are just fantastic, and interestingly, we're seeing a straight transition to that infestation pit. Where is that macro hatch being constructed? He's getting up. Oh, there it is, in the main base. He might even be able to get away building another one. At this point in time, it looks like Bomber is taking up his third as well, so it's defensive mode.
Indeed he do, as he does have those gases on the way as well, so he's going to be going straight up to the 6 gas geysers to be able to pump out a lot of tanks if he so desires. Does he have siege tech? Yes, he does. So with centrifugal hooks on the way, there's always the potential that Baneling and fungal connections can be very, very brutal against the Terran, and that's something that Bomber will have to ward himself against. But in game 1, he was able to split very nicely against the Baneling. So if he's able to take that defensive stance early on, then that can really, really help him against Delphi's style here.
Yeah, I do think that this is a much nicer way that Bomber's playing it out. Much more his standard. Anytime he's in trouble, he just goes for 3 base, huge macro, is just now finished 1-1. We'll be certainly doing some sort of push around 2-2. Might even do one slightly earlier. But we have seen Bomber do interesting things like take this center expansion a little bit earlier. But not going to go for that this game. Delphi, on the other hand, is doing a magnificent job spreading creep. Holy crap, Kalaris, look at that.
And not only is that creep great for defense, but also the spine crawler positioning that we're seeing from Delphi is great for defense. He's building spine crawlers in the back to be able to deal with any kind of drop play that would come along, as well as the extremities of his third base. And no doubt we'll see some go down at the 4th base, which Delphi is going to be taking as well, because you don't necessarily need them in the middle when your army is positioned through that vicinity. So he's creating a really nice defensive barrier here.
Uh-oh, looks like Bomber's doing a drop at the bottom right. Wow, we're seeing another attack happen at the 3rd base, and Bomber is again surprisingly surprisingly underprepared for this. It looks like the first 2 tanks fall down, but there's the tank shot that Bomber needed, is just obliterating those Banelings, and a hugely bad attack for Delphi, and it looks like he will also lose his bottom right base.
Yeah, those Marines going to be able to do quite a bit of damage, and they do force the cancellation on that 4th, but the Sense Tower on the way now for Bomber as well. And the siege tanks that we had from Bomber in the 3rd location weren't really backed up by the Marines initially, so he did get some relatively free siege tank kills there, but once the Marines came in, it was okay.
So it looks like Bomber now in that bottom right corner with the medevac. Delphi now moving to try to meet it with his Infestor pack. We see drones being transferred to an expansion that isn't there. And, I mean, Delphi's not in a terrible position, but he's certainly not in a great one.
No, not at all. As for now, Delphi will be able to send back all his... Where is he actually going? He's going over to a different location. As for now, he will be able to just throw down that 4th once again. 5th going up as well, so I really like this from Delphi, as well as getting up that hive. And from now on, though, Bomber is looking to go for the aggression. Oh, wow, look at the macro here from Bomber. He's got 15 Marines on the way at any given time. 2-2 going to be finishing up in just a little bit, and that is going to be way before the upgrades here of Delphi. And with the extra siege tanks in production as well, Bomber going up to a 4th command center here. He is flying in terms of macro.
Looks like Bomber now trying to get into a good position at the south side. Has cleaned up enough of the creep to be in a good spot. He's distracted Delphi just long enough, and this is the Bomber that we know so well. He's moving down to this bottom right half, and there it looks like, oh, the siege tank's sieging up. Delphi doesn't retreat. He doesn't manage to hit a fungal either. The tanks rip apart that front line of Banelings. A couple Infestors get taken out as well, and Bomber is looking to be in an amazing position in this game.
Yeah, too true. He was able to retain so many of those Marines thanks to the fact that he wasn't able to land those fungal growths, and now he's going to continue the aggression. He's separating a lot of his Marines, really nicely done here. He does get a good surround on some of these Marines with the Zerglings, and a nice fungal growth to finish that off, but it just isn't enough right now. Bomber doesn't have that many medevacs out here to be able to heal up the majority of these units, but he's still going to be able to get this base kill.
And now is also trying to do a nice push up to the 3rd base. Bomber does take out the Queen, and takes out 2 Queens, and completely avoids losing that to that Spore Crawler as well. And Delphi's looking just behind in general. I mean, his Ultralisk Cavern is a little slow. He's trying to get up his Baneling, Zergling army in the middle. His Infestor count is down to 0. He has 100 drones on the map.
Yeah, and this is I mean, in comparison to Game 1, this is really showing where Bomber shines. Going into this big macro game and being able to poke here, there, and everywhere, he's got, again, he's going to be pushing into the middle of the map, dropping the scan here to be able to kill off those creep tumors, make that recede just a little bit, and from there on, he's going to try and pressure this 5th, in inverted commas, to be able to take it out once again.
And it looks like Delphi is going to try to set himself up for a multi-pronged attack, but Bomber is already in good position. He's shutting down all those Zergling, Baneling attempts. Bomber's standard play is just completely overpowering Delphi in this position. And there he is moving up from the front, picking off some of these Zerglings. He desperately wants to keep that one hatchery alive, but no, it's not going to cut it. Bomber takes it down.
Ouch. And just a quick question, Day 9. Oh, actually, with the Zerglings coming in, hold that thought, as he's going to be able to try and defend once again. But Delphi just does not have enough here to be able to break Bomber. And with the economy that Delphi finds himself in now, I mean, with Adrenal Glands and a few Ultras on the way, do you think he has enough economy to be able to really fund this war effort?
It's so hard to go for a Ling Infestor Ultra army when you have just 6 gas geysers. Getting 7 and 8 are the most important aspects to that. Delphi now will have to try to recoup himself, but I mean, Bomber's in great position, taking himself a 4th base. Already has it completely muled up, already has the planetary fortress there, is reinforcing so quickly. I mean, this is Bomber's game.
Yeah, he is looking phenomenal here. Delphi, admittedly, does rise a little bit in his supply count, currently 185 to the 189 of Bomber, but again, he needs to somehow find that miracle move to still re-establish himself some economy whilst being able to actually shut down all this drop aggression and then mount some kind of counter-offensive to be able to shut down the infrastructure and economy of Bomber. It's going to be very, very difficult here for Delphi, despite having Kaiser's placing on the way and more Ultralisks on the way.
So it looks like Delphi is now moving up to the top side. He is trying to get into a good position to defend against this, but he is going to be trying to deal with this upcoming push that's heading through mid-map. Down in the bottom right, hatchery is trying to go up. There's a single fungal, but gosh, Delphi just cannot find out a good angle.
Not at all. And with that only one Infestor there, he didn't have many Fungals at all. He has one more extra Infestor waddling along here to try and put on this aggression. He's going to try and bust Bomber here, as Bomber did provide himself with a fantastic position. Morin's piling in from the back.
Some excellent swipes there on the Ultras, managed to take down most of the tanks, but still, Bomber keeps most of his army alive. And there's the good game, well played. Tying the series up 1-1. So that does mean that Bomber, again, looking to be in good form. Just need apparently a warm-up game to get into the groove of things.
Yeah. I mean, that game two was just, aside from the little slip in the early game where the Zerglings got in, that was a different Bomber from game number one. He's just getting into his rhythm, and then once he goes into those big macro plays, he's able to really kind of push out, you know, that multi-pronged aggression that Delphi wasn't necessarily able to deal with, despite going for some aggression of his own. So the multitasking stretched a little bit there for Delphi, but he's still in this, and from here on, there's still a lot to play for.